Right now, we're going to take a look at what's making news headlines in France with Diptyque Laurent. Very good morning to you.
Hi, Kat.
And now we're going to start off with a story that is very, very close to many French people's hearts. It's about this climate change agreement that was struck right here in Paris. It was absolutely historic. The first time countries all around the world had signed up to combat climate change. But now it looks like Donald Trump might be about to throw it into the bin.
That's right. The anticipation, Kat, is mounting because he's set to announce this Thursday whether he's going to keep the U.S. in or out of the Paris climate change agreement. Libération, the left-leaning paper, says on its front page, "Thank you, Trump." And it says it not at all ironically, actually. Because if you read into the article, you'll see that the paper says really the chaos surrounding Trump's presidency, the tensions between the White House and Europe, as well as the chaos of Brexit, actually means that German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron's Franco-German partnership has been kicked into action. It's been reinforced. And this is really going to help Europe as a whole. It's going to help them get out of their political crisis and debt crisis. I want to quote Libé, which says, "Never before has the transatlantic divide been so large. Washington is showing itself to be more chummy with Saudi Arabia than its European allies. As a result, there's a role to occupy, one that the EU can occupy as a leader in defense, foreign policy, and domestic security." And Libé is actually dedicating this subject to its editorial this morning, saying, "Is Europe a covfefe for Donald Trump?" Employing the famous weird typo that kind of became a meme all around the world yesterday.
Just like 24 hours ago.
That's right.
This phenomenon that came out of nowhere,
It's
just
sort of
from
the
some sort of
gift that
sleepy
keeps on
tweet.
giving.
Yeah, exactly.
So Libé asks in its editorial, is Europe a covfefe for Donald Trump? Is Europe, by that definition, something unidentified, something non-existent? If so, it's all the more reason for the EU to take a leading role now on the global stage.
That's a very interesting perspective, isn't it? Let's look at the right-leaning paper, Le Figaro. I know that they're also looking at this anticipated announcement from Donald Trump.
Well, Le Figaro is using the same word that Libé used, fossé, which means gap, divide, separation, distance. And they say Trump is increasing this divide between Europe and the US, saying that the EU, without the UK, is actually enjoying a rebound in confidence. The reason being that the Eurozone's growth surpassed that of the US in the first trimester of this year. You had Emmanuel Macron, who was elected against the far-right candidate, Marine Le Pen. And even looking ahead to the German elections, it's clear that both frontrunners there are pro-European. So really, things are looking up for the EU for once, at least if you read this glass half-full vision from Le Figaro.
Oh, we like a bit of optimism. I'll take that on a Thursday.
We don't have enough of it.
Exactly. Now, another big story in French newspapers is about something that I think everyone has an opinion on, the weather, one of my favourite topics of conversation.
That's right. Anywhere in France, I guess you can strike a conversation with any French person about the weather. They love to talk about it.
British people we are the past masters.
That's right. Le Parisien is talking about it. Call it sort of a post-election aversion to anything political or presidential fatigue. But this is a big story in the French papers today. What is the weather going to be like this summer? What kind of summer are we going to have? That's what Le Parisien says on its front page. Well, the answer is no heat wave, but it will be hotter than usual, at least in France. I can't say for the rest of Europe. And the interesting thing is that meteorological experts are actually getting better and better at predicting the weather. Le Parisien explains that basically, experts predict the climate based on the behavior of air mass and certain elements observed at a certain time. But they do admit that most forecasts, at least 3-month forecasts, are usually based on probability. And the paper actually talks about what it calls a super calculator that's based in Toulouse that crunches all the numbers and gives weather experts information that they then pass on to the news.
I don't want to ruin the optimism, but this could be bad news for farmers, couldn't it?
That's right. It could be, because we're coming off a dry winter, which means that a dry, hot summer is not good for crops, especially water-based crops. And in fact, La Croix, the Catholic paper, says that there's been somewhere around 30% less rainfall in this winter. The last time we saw that was in 2012. And as a result, this is not shaping up to be good news for French farmers.
All right, let's just turn to one last story from Le Parisien. You'll remember the policeman who was shot dead on the Champs-Élysées just before the French presidential election, Xavier Jugelé. Now, there's been a landmark legal agreement for his partner.
That's right. His partner, Etienne Cardilès, was allowed to marry him posthumously in a ceremony that took place last month, assisted by Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo and François Hollande himself. The Le Parisien says it's a really old practice that dates back to 1803, when widows of military men were allowed to posthumously marry their partners to give their children legal status and receive a pension. Well, this was the case for Cardilès as well. There were two stipulations. The marriage must be granted for serious reasons, in this case a terror attack, and the other stipulation is that the surviving member must prove that the couple were living with, quote, matrimonial desire.
Well, that's a heartwarming story to end our French Press Review. Thanks very much, Diptyque Laurent, who'll be back a bit later on looking through the international papers for us as well.